Hare Krishna, Happy New Year to all. Thank you for joining our live stream. If you're watching it later, thank you for watching it. Please do comment, please do share. We're mindful that we're not producing this content as often as we'd like to. We're having a chat about that. But we do have a very important update today. And some of you will have noticed the recent Justice Ministry self-congratulatory YouTube clip, where they're all talking about how wonderful it's all going to be under the new regime with due process, the big banner that gets rolled out that, this is what's going to be different. Of course, a bit of irony that they actually ousted the former ICPO without any due process. He was just told, your time's up. We don't think you're following due process. No evidence to that, but there you go. Why did they bang on about due process when we're dealing with someone who's trained in child protection, when we're dealing with someone who has a very strong procedural manual, which has been vetted and approved by authorities, who has a master's degree in child protection? Well, I think we're about to find out why that banner was there, because it's the pretext for some scurrilous behavior. One might expect that we'd see due process now. What you'll learn today, in fact, is that it's amateur hour and brazenly violating what we might expect due process to look like, and perhaps a not so well hidden agenda. Just as a final little thing before I introduce Sanaka, who hopefully you all know, the long-standing campaigner for child protection in our society. At the beginning of that Justice Ministry clip, Champakalada introduces a quote purportedly from Srila Prabhupada to Brahmananda Prabhu in April 1970, referring to proper justice, which she then gave us her purport was proper justice meant due process. Nothing about holding offenders to account. I can't find that letter. I'd really be interested, and anyone else can find the letter. I've looked in all of the different collations of Prabhupada's letters. It's possible it's just an invention. Anyway, let's have a look at what this new era of due process actually entails in practice. Over to you, Sanaka Prabhu. Thank you for joining us as always. The floor is yours.
Haribol, Dandavat, Vanchakalpa, Tarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhu Vyahevacha, Patitanam, Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha. Thank you, Damodar, for hosting and for your continued support to try and raise the bar for child protection in ISKCON. It's really much needed. There's things are looking worse. My name is Sanaka Rishi Das. I went to Gurukul in Villa Vrindavan in Italy. I was born in Italy. Then I went to Gurukul in Vrindavan. I was in Vrindavan for almost 5 years. And I also was briefly in Mayapur. And so while I was in Vrindavan, I started to get, in Gurukul, I started to get the first, firsthand experiences of a broken system. And at that time, I thought that's the norm. That's just how things are. And as time passed, as I grew, as I matured, I started to observe. I saw that it's not really a broken system. It's the system is doing what it's designed to do. They say that the definition of insanity, or one of the definitions of insanity, is to do the same thing, hoping for a different result. And so if we look at child protection in ISKCON, I would say that the GBC have tried to do it their way for 50 years, and the result is consistent. It's been devastating for the devotee children. And yet, somehow, the GBC still haven't, it hasn't, the light bulb hasn't switched on. It's like, maybe we don't know what we're doing. Maybe we need to try something new. Maybe whatever we've done, our playbook, there is something wrong with our playbook. Somehow that hasn't, that realization is yet to manifest. I pray that it will very soon. Yeah, today we're here talking about some new developments.
Can I jump in?
Yeah,
Yeah,
please.
I'll jump in. So we've become aware that there's been a somewhat clandestine approach to now reviewing old cases. There was an undertaking by the CPOC, which is the new regime with Champakalata at the helm, saying, no, we're not going to go back and reopen old cases and so on. Although they did leave this little clause in that they do reserve the right for procedural reviews. So if they think that the procedure was somehow flawed, they are leaving the door open to do these things. And they've started. Now, in this particular case that we've become aware of, not only did they take direction from the GBC Executive Committee, so that's already a very concerning item. I remember Anuta telling me personally, we know you're going to be sorry about the decision we made about a certain Indian Swami, but you'll be really pleased to see that we've promised we're never again going to interfere. And now we're actually reading from Champakalata that the GBC Executive Committee directed her to look at this particular case. What's scary is that they went about that. They didn't actually review the case files because they didn't have them, nor did they even approach anyone to get the case files. It seems that there was an appeal, and this was outside of the jurisdiction of what they would consider. And they only listened to the appellant. The appellant made an argument, well, we weren't members of ISKCON at the time, me and the person I abused, allegedly. So this is out of jurisdiction. No verification of this, no conversation with the victim in this particular case. That only came to the victim's attention when video started circulating about a hero's welcome for the person now back on the altar at their local temple. So this is really bewildering. And of course, the victim instantly asked for a please explain, and we'll share with you some of the answers that they received from these due process people that apparently they're all about due process.
The answer she didn't get. I just wanted to clarify. You said that Champakalata is at the helm of this CPOC. She's not. She a lady called Govinda Lilamrita is the head of CPOC. Champakalata is I think her exact title is interim CPO director, meaning that they put her in there temporarily. 6 months ago, they said they would review it. I don't know what happened. But before we dive into the story, I wanted to just mention that CPOC. So CPOC, so this lady, Govinda Lilamrita, is the head of CPOC. CPOC is made up of people that have mostly legal background. They have very little child protection experience, training, qualifications between them. It's disproportionately, like the legal team is disproportionately overrepresented, and the child protection team is non-existent. When they formed the CPOC, they said somewhere, I can find it, but they said somewhere that they would bring in a child protection expert on to be part of CPOC, because after all, how do you review child protection if nobody knows you got nobody qualified in child protection, nobody specialized in child protection. None of these people are specialized in child protection. The other problem with CPOC is that all these guys, I take that back. Maybe not all of them, but most of them, the vast majority of them they wear several hats within ISKCON, the ISKCON political arena, which creates a huge conflict of interest. essentially child protection is one of their many jobs. So there is one of the CPOC members is Nityananda Karini. She's a lady from Eastern Europe somewhere. She is also the secretary, I think, for the Euro GBC, and she's CPOC. And then who is there to ensure that she doesn't take information from that she gets while she's wearing one hat and she doesn't use it with the other hat when there is a conflict of interest between the different positions that these people occupy? How do they? It's like there's no mention anywhere about this problem of conflicts of interest, and most of them, if not all of them, are implicated in some way. Champakalata is Justice Ministry. She is CPO director. She is I don't know all her titles, but she's got a whole bunch of titles. So there is that's just the beginning of the problems. When they were first formed, the whole thing was inauspicious. As you mentioned, they came up the way they came about. There was no consultation with child protection experts. I think one of the people that was involved is the current GBC executive, one of the Govardhana. Who the guy has zero child protection experience. He was running a gas station up until some time back. I don't know if he's still doing it. So you get a guy who has a background running a gas station. It's like, well, let's put him as a GBC executive committee. Okay, fine. Maybe he's a decent manager, I hope. But how does he have a say in child protection?
And this was the gentleman. This was the gentleman we all saw on TV a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Bleeding heart for the abusers who've been horribly restricted forever. Apparently, there's only 2 cases that actually have a lifetime ban. One of them didn't even get issued by the CPO, which is Bhakti Vijayaporna. That was actually by the Leadership Misconduct Office. So I'm not sure who these lifetime bans are that he's referring to, but obviously not a thought for the victims at all. Wasn't on the radar at all. No sympathy at all.
But the thing is that's not just Govardhana. That's the playbook that all these people are working by. The victim is non-existent in this whole process. The victim is non-existent, as we will hopefully we're going to be able to convey by the end of this podcast. So there are so many layers to this. It's kind of I'm going to do my best to try and unpack the whole thing. So. Kamlesh Krishna resigned, or was...
Did he resign?
No, he didn't resign. He was forcefully replaced. He was fired. Whatever. He did not resign. At the beginning of 2025, he up until he was in office, he was using the CPO manual that was ratified by the GBC into 2018. That's all they had. Now, there is, in August last year, the GBC released something that was deceptively named the 2023 CPO, the revised 2023 CPO manual policy. So in the title, it sounds like the manual is from 2023, but it wasn't released up until August of last year, 2025. So essentially, Kamlesh did not, what I'm getting at is that Kamlesh never had these policies to work with. He had the 2018 policies. One significant difference that there is between the 2018 policies and the revised policies is one of jurisdiction. So the 2018 policies state that any clergy member of ISKCON, so that means anybody who has any kind of office, could be a pujari, could be a temple president, certainly GBC and guru, any clergy member is under CPO, the jurisdiction of the CPO. meaning that if you're the temple president and under the 2018 policies, if you are the temple president and allegations surface that you did something 20 years ago, before you joined the temple, before you became temple president, when you were still, you weren't a devotee, but allegations surface, credible allegations surface that you abused children, that is still under the jurisdiction of the CPO. And it makes sense because we do want to know if somebody poses a risk to children. It doesn't matter whether it happened 20 years ago when you were working for McDonald's. If you abused a child 20 years ago when you weren't a devotee, you still pose a threat today, and ISKCON is concerned with that, and we don't want people like that roaming around, or if they are around, we certainly want restrictions on them. We don't want them to have access to children, for example. Whereas so that's the 2018 policies. The revised and improved 2023 that
you have to do this with improved.
improved 2023 manual that was released in 2025 says that anything that happened before you were a devotee is not the jurisdiction of the CPO. So that means that if you were a serial child rapist before joining the temple, and then you join the temple and you become a temple president, you become a guru, that's not CPO jurisdiction. We don't get involved in that. And that is
what could possibly explain even wanting that in place. Is this because an acknowledgement, I suppose, tacitly, that some people have skeletons in the closet and they wish to have immunity?
Well, what I keep coming back to is, how does this policy improve the protection of children in ISKCON? How does this improvement to the policies, where you say, if you're a child rapist, you're not jurisdiction of the CPO, you didn't abuse kids when you were a devotee, we don't care, we don't want to know. To me, is like that it's insane. And this was the version that was ratified by this whole really clever and smart legal team. I'm speechless. But what I'm getting at is that this is exactly what they have done, which was extremely deceitful in this specific case, is that they illegally applied retroactively, which was what they said they were never going to do. So they retroactively applied the new policies onto an old case, and they said, oh, the old case does not meet the criteria because this incident took place before this person became a devotee. Which
let's press the pause button there. So you posed the question, is it about child protection? It would seem that the protection of children is not the main concern. It is the protection of those who are being accused. That would appear to be.
But this specific change, not only it doesn't improve child protection, it puts children in jeopardy, because what this change means is that it opens the door for known child predators to be around ISKCON, and the CPO is not going to get involved. Who's going to get involved?
Well, and just to follow through while it's sort of fresh there, in this case, they not only backdated with criteria that was not available and therefore not being applied. In other words, it's a brand new policy being retroactively applied, but they didn't even verify before changing the outcome or the adjudicated result that in fact that was true. They simply took the appellant's word for it. Oh, we weren't members of ISKCON at the time.
Yeah, so they took,
didn't even ask the victim, and it was a lie.
Essentially, so the victim states that they were both very much part of the ISKCON congregation at the time when she was raped, and this is the rape of a child that we're talking about. Just to clarify the gravity. Of what we're talking about. It's the rape of a child. CPO says we're going to, it's not in our jurisdiction because they weren't devotees at the time. but this is the claim of the perpetrator. It's or the alleged perpetrator. It's not the claim of the victim. Claims something else. The victim actually says that they were devotees. So in theory, even this botched up, retroactively, illegally applied regulation, it doesn't even stick. No matter how you look at it, it doesn't stick.
And it's worth bearing in mind, just as a little note to anyone watching, we are tiptoeing around naming individuals and trying to use the most appropriate language because we clearly have a very litigious CPOC. So please, please excuse us. There may be more details that come in due course, but we're having to do a little bit of a tightrope walk here. I think the words, even child protection oversight, you might think that's something to do with overseeing, but it seems like it is more about oversight, like forgetting to do things. That's just how it looks.
Just to give, okay, I don't even know where to start. just to give an example of how, what's the word you use? Litigious. The CPOC people are. They're all lawyers, so I guess that's their job. But Govinda Lilamrita had sent word to me that she will take legal action against me if I mention her name. I'm not sure because it was like she told somebody to pass the message on to me. I'm not quoting it exactly, but she definitely threatened legal action. And of course that's concerning for me, for not just because of the potential legal liabilities, and I have no idea what those are or could be, but what's more concerning is that this is the head of the Child Protection Oversight Committee, and I read some of the emails that they sent to the victim, and all over these emails there are these veiled threats of confidentiality and don't share these things. So it's like the law is used instead of protecting the victims and the whistleblowers. The law is being used as a weapon to threaten, frighten, silence, and oppress both the victims and whistleblowers. And to me, that's even more concerning than whatever personal repercussion I might come to face here. Because when you have a child protection body that operates with this philosophy, it's so destructive. It's like, how can victims feel comfortable coming? It's like, how can you tell a victim you can't share your story because there's going to be legal repercussions and there's data protection, this, that, and the other, when they themselves didn't follow any of that. They share like so the victims. So let me see if I can try to summarize what happened. The alleged perpetrator requested a review to, I think, to the GBC Executive Committee. The GBC Executive Committee passed it to the CPOC. CPOC looked at the case. Now, it's important to bear in mind that CPOC did not have the case files. So their review was very one-sided. They only had whatever, presumably they only
and they didn't even ask for them.
They didn't even ask for them. Presumably all they had was the whatever the perpetrator gave. So they have the story, whatever story the perpetrator fed them, alleged perpetrator, whatever. God. And
the appellant.
That's all they had. On the basis of these very biased and limited information, they decided that there was procedural improprieties. They
Jurisdictional overreach because they weren't members. The appellant told us, well, they weren't members, so we didn't verify that.
There was jurisdictional overreach, but also they decided that the sanctions were excessive. So without seeing what the allegations are, they decided that the restrictions are excessive. And so the whole thing is, anyway, then CPOC passed the recommendations to the GBC Executive Committee. The GBC Executive Committee forwarded them to Champakalata, which, by the way, just as a reminder, as you mentioned earlier, the GBC did mention publicly, we will never get involved in child protection matters. And here they are meddling in the background, this, that, and the other. And Champakalata, she just went along with it. Now, I have here.
Well, she even put it in writing. So what we're saying about it being referred by the GBC Executive Committee, that's in writing in a couple of places.
Yeah. Yesterday, the GBC Executive Committee referred the CPOC's recommendation to me. Having reviewed the report and in accordance with the authority vested in me, I wish to confirm the following. And then she goes on to lift all restrictions on the alleged perpetrator. But there's something more interesting in Champakalata's letter. She says, I'm reading, the lifting of, hold up, I'm getting old. The lifting of restrictions therefore follows these procedural findings and does not constitute a judgment on the merits of the original complaint. So what Champakalata is saying here is that she didn't she didn't look at the merits of the complaint, of the allegations. She says purely on jurisdictional issues, which, as I explained, they're extremely flawed. But she's saying, I didn't even consider the merits of the allegations. Purely on jurisdictional issues, I've lifted all restrictions on this guy. So what she is saying is that and I'm not saying that jurisdictional matters and due process is not important, which they didn't follow due process, in my opinion. I'm not saying that that's not it. What I am saying is that in this letter that she wrote, there is not one mention of, not even a sentence of concern spared for the thought of, wait, okay, there are some jurisdictional issues, but if I don't look at the merits of the allegations, I'm putting an accused child sex predator, I'm giving him full immunity to go in the community without any restrictions. That it didn't even cross her mind. And this is the person who's directing child protection. So the director of child protection is more concerned with due process, which is not even due process, than with protecting children. So it like the whole thing. I mean, if this is not dereliction of duty, I don't know what it is. What is?
Well, and to my knowledge, again, we're not naming the alleged perpetrator in this case, but is also banned from the Mayapur campus. Evidently, there have been other behavioral concerns, none of which I'm across. But it's this person, is now back worshipping the deities, even though, as you say, there was a rape allegation made, and those restrictions were there. Now, we have to remember that the CPO follows preponderance of evidence. So it's not imposing, state-sanctioned penalties on people, prison sentences or, the like, or even being added to registered offenders lists and the other things that would take place externally. It simply decides, based on the available evidence, does it seem more likely than not that this person does pose a risk? And if so, how do we insulate, others so they're not exposed?
But that's the issue right there. The CPO, allegedly, the CPO is supposed to work on preponderance of evidence. But what they have done here is evidence beyond reasonable doubt. They looked at whatever evidence they had. They said, well, the accused is contesting these charges. we don't have evidence beyond reasonable doubt. We're going to exonerate the guy, which is it's against the CPO policies.
So
Unfortunately,
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, maybe we can then talk about from the time that the victim discovered, to her shock and dismay, that hang on, these restrictions have obviously been listed because the fellow's back on the altar doing pujari service and so on. Then, you know, we should perhaps look at the case that she then brought. She wrote, obviously, for clarification to CPOC. She wrote to the GBC and saying, excuse me, can someone just explain what's gone on here? And asked a load of reasonable questions. And some of the responses, well, non-responses really from the GBC, but some of the responses from CPOC, Ministry of Justice, Champakalata and so on, are kind of soulless beyond imagination. I mean, extraordinary. But, you know, you might somewhere else you want to go first.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to mention that Dayal Mora, he is the temple president of the So Street Temple. And unfortunately, not surprisingly, I don't know how to word it, but he gave a hero's welcome to the accused, to the alleged perpetrator, and he has a history of. He's also a big supporter. He's also allowed another. He welcomed back, and not welcomed him back, but he let him into the temple. Another person who was found guilty of child abuse, and he's also a big supporter of Keshava Bharati. Now, you know, we can single him out, but to me, what's more interesting is why would it be different? And it's not just a rhetorical question. You could say it should be different because he's an aspiring devotee, because he's a human being, and because this behavior is something that even, as I've said before, violent convicted criminals, they have a better understanding of how serious child abuse is than people who are aspiring devotees. To me, that's mind-boggling. But the fact of the matter is that Dayal Mora and devotees from his generation, they were raised in an environment, in a movement where the leadership has been very lenient, very forgiving, very tolerant of child abuse. Dayal Mora is far more strict in with devotees from the Gaudiya Math than he is with child abusers. So he sees Gaudiya Math devotees as a greater threat than child abusers. That's the madness of it. It's insane. To me, it's just like, how do you even begin to reason with someone that has that kind of worldview? But then you look at, ISKCON has 50 years of GBCs covering up, minimizing, honoring child abusers. So how do you expect somebody like Dayal Mora to have a different perspective?
Well, the GBC chairman, the GBC EC chairman is literally going into bat. And the fact that this was put in writing. So I'm going to read the victim's sort of request for, please explain, to the GBC. Sanaka, you may have the letter to CPOC in the background, but that's the one that I'm going to just look at because...
I mean, I have a 4-page letter that the victim wrote to, how do you say? It's addressed to the GBC Executive Committee, but...
Yes, that's the one I'm looking at too.
So it's important to understand to reiterate that when the victim reached out to Champakalata and asked Champakalata, why was I not involved? Why was I not informed that there was a review of my case? I found out through someone else. I didn't even get a courtesy email that you were done. I wasn't informed that there was a review. I wasn't aware that a review, that there was even legal GBC laws that allowed such a review. I wasn't consulted. The perpetrator was consulted. I heard through someone else, and Champakalata replied, Oh, the CPO manual is silent on whether the victim is whether we should inform the victim that we have essentially reversed her case. So it's like,
well, so let's just examine that statement. Let's just examine that statement. It was silent, as if her hands are tied because it doesn't tell me what to do.
yeah,
It didn't occur to me that that would probably be, but she's sort of sidestepping the fact that she was most likely involved in developing the policy. It didn't occur to us as being important to notify a victim that we've taken a different course and we've removed the restrictions. We didn't consider that was necessary. We didn't consider that. What form of due process are we talking about here? It seems like all they're saying is, hey, we came up with a process and we're following it. Whether that process is due, as in whether it's actually following any kind of sane or appropriate measures. I mean, it's not just follow process, due process. Due process typically means weighing everything up.
It's like it was silent, so she chose not to tell the victim. It's that's her responsibility. Silent means if
I'm not obliged.
No, but it means if you have a conscience, of course you're going to contact the victim. It involves her. And if you want to follow due process, you're not just going to listen to the accused. You're going to say, okay, the accused wants to make this appeal. Let me find out if there is grounds for this appeal. Let me find out why this the previous CPO reached this verdict. Let me find out whether the victim confirms the claims of the accused. Let me consult with the victim. Let me give a equal and fair opportunity to the victim to voice her side of the story. There was none of that. And somehow this is due process.
I remember seeing a cartoon some years ago. I think I even posted it on Vedic Inquiry, very cynical. And it was a lawyer doing his final summing up in the courtroom. And he basically says, the defense's case is that the defendant says he's innocent. We rest.
Yeah.
Like,
that's it. Yeah.
No, it's crazy. I might just start quickly reading this, and we won't necessarily read all 4 pages, but we'll cherry pick what's important.
All right, go for it.
So, dear GBC Executive Committee, the whole thing is titled "Request for Immediate Clarification and Review of Procedural Concerns," dated 24th of November 2025. I'm writing with concern and deep distress about the recent handling of my case by CPOC and Champagalatta, as authorized by you. In an email to me dated 20th of November 2025, Champagalatta stated, I'm attaching the decision and the report. Now, this is after she's already said, hey, excuse me, what's happening here? Based on the decision which was reached after it was redirected by the GBC EC to me. So here's a clear violation of another GBC undertaking. Promise one thing, declare one thing. From this day onwards, we will never again interfere. We want you to look at this case, CPOC. And then she goes on, it has left me shocked, confused, and re-traumatized. Before sharing the impact this decision has had on me, I'd like to respectfully ask for answers to the following questions as they relate directly to the legality, transparency, and fairness of what has occurred. Please provide a copy of your written decision or instruction to the interim CPO director. Good luck with that. I'm sure they're now already in damage and imitation mode because they weren't supposed to leak that. Why was my data accessed without any attempt to obtain my consent? Now, we all heard Vinay Tanna the other day making a big deal about privacy and people's right to information, and even potentially giving a free kick to, lawyers who are opposing ISKCON about cases that are still open. Thanks for that, Vinay. And she points out, I never gave my consent for personal data and sensitive information to be reviewed by CPOC. Well, perhaps they didn't even bother reviewing it because they didn't think it was important. After all, the appellant had told them, it wasn't me, I wasn't there, we weren't in ISKCON, so no jurisdiction. And then she goes on to say, GBC resolution from 2022 explicitly states that the GBC will not intervene in CPO matters except for appointing the director and approving policies. Why then were CPOC's recommendations about my case sent to you? Anyway, there's a load of great questions.
Read the last 3 points that she makes at the bottom of her letter. Her request.
Okay, I will. I'm scrolling. Okay, I respectfully request, this is the bit, right? An immediate suspension of the decision to overturn the original restrictions or reinstatement of those restrictions in the interim while this matter is properly and independently reinvestigated. That seems like the most reasonable thing you could ask for. A full explanation of the procedural steps. Okay, you're all about due process. We would now like you to submit your process for examination. The GBC and the interim CPO director and the policy under which each step was authorized. A neutral third-party review to determine whether CPOC, the GBC EC, and the interim CPO director followed ISKCON law, safeguarding policy, and data protection regulations. Now, it's worth saying that she did get replies from 2 individual GBC members. One of them basically said, "Have you thought about going to ISKCON Resolve?" And the other one basically said, "Well, I'm going to note that I've received it."
Yeah,
that's it. That's as heartfelt as the GBC were able to be. Funny enough, the GBC, I guess we've already revealed that the issue is UK specific. So Pragosh also wrote with the police explain, and he was told off. You're not allowed to interfere in CPO decisions. Hang on. I'm receiving directions from the GBC EC, but clearly you're a little bit victim-centric, so we're going to tell you, yellow card, you're out of bounds. I mean, what amateur hour, what kind of unprincipled nonsense is this?
It's a lot more serious than that. What CPOC replied, it says, so CPOC, whoever wrote on behalf of CPOC, the guidelines are clear. CPOC operates independently with full impartiality and transparency and is accountable only to due process and to Srila Prabhupada's mandate for the protection of children and devotees. So essentially what CPOC is saying is we're not accountable to anyone. And that's exactly how they operate. That's what they've been doing. Due process and Srila Prabhupada's mandate. So essentially due process, who decides what is due process? Because none of what they've done seems to follow anything that would be reasonably described as due process. And then it's their own interpretation of Prabhupada's mandate for the protection of children and devotees, which they are referring to a letter that you can't find, I'm guessing. Krishna. And so what the CPO, CPOC, everybody, what they did is they sent this letter where Champakalata essentially lifted all restrictions on the alleged perpetrator. Champakalata sent this letter to the perpetrator. She didn't send it to the victim. She didn't send it to the GBC. She didn't send it to CPO Europe. So Chitrarupini even did not get a copy of this letter. So essentially, talk about a system that prioritizes the perpetrators. So you've got the alleged perpetrator. He gets a copy of that. He's been exonerated. Nobody else does. Not the GBC. The Euro GBC wrote asking, and he got stonewalled. The victim wrote asking, can I have a copy? And she had to beg for it. And the GBC got told off. Pragosh got told off. It's insane how these people are operating. I don't know. And the best part is, the most ironic part of, if it wasn't so sad, it would be hilarious, is that then they went on to conduct a self-assessment, and they praised themselves on how they handled this case, which is, it's ironic because to me, the only person I can think that comes to mind that does that is Trump. Trump assesses his own work and he's like, I'm the best. It's like, it's so Trumpian what they've done.
Let the record show that it was Sanaka who introduced Trump. Okay, let's the record show this.
No, it's just like, oh God, you got to laugh. And then they praise CPO Bharat, which is another So CPO Bharat in this year, not this year, 2025, they had something come up in the Vrindavan Gurukul and some other cases, which where the CPOC was involved, at least in one of them. So CPOC is aware that CPO Bharat is not following due process. They're not using the professional investigators. They're just using their guys to conduct the investigations. They're badgering and bullying the victims, and then they get lavish praise from CPOC, and the perpetrators, they were found guilty and they got a 6-month suspension. So these were for physical. They were beating children. So teachers and adults that were beating children, they were found guilty of excessive force. I don't know what the wording was. And they suspended them for 6 months. So after 6 months, you can come back. It's not even, we'll review the situation after 6 months. But you send somebody who is violent and physical with children, and after 6 months he's back. What message do the children get? It's just like, we're not safe. And that's what, and they also quote that case as a victory. And the victims don't feel, they feel cheated, they feel betrayed, they feel abandoned. It's anyway.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is absolutely shocking, and please do stay tuned because there'll be more information coming on this one. But let's look at this, because in some ways it might not be a surprise in principle that they suddenly decided to change the guidelines, now decide to retroactively apply them, even just against their commitment to do that, and suddenly find that they're now starting to exonerate people as dictated by the GBC EC. This is all sounding a little messed up. Is it possible, it's certainly not beyond the bounds of reasoning, that this particular case, which is, a very serious case, as you say, an alleged rape, and someone who seems to have a little bit of a history, but not high-profile ISKCON leaders, but somehow still favored. I could imagine if they did use the same methodology to go straight away to seek to exonerate other cases. Let's acknowledge how much of a noise has been made over the Lakshmi Money case. So much noise. I mean, in talking with the ICPO, it's very clear that they can mark the time when more or less all support was withdrawn and they started to get hassled and accused and people screaming down the phone, you've got to change the Lakshmi Money verdict. This is not okay. And I remember interviewing Hridayananda Maharaj with Krishna Devata a couple of years ago. This Kamlesh Krishna, he doesn't have any child protection qualifications. Maharaj, he's got an advanced degree. No, that's not right.
Yeah.
Do you need to see the degree? I mean, so they've made a rhetoric, they've made a narrative that's saying the former CPO didn't follow due process. They've never verified what their gaps in due process were.
They've never made that clear.
Give a dog a bad name and hang him. It's a very classic strategy. And under the pretext of due process, we now would need to conduct some procedural reviews. Is it possible that if they'd gone straight away to try and exonerate Lakshmi or Keshava Bharati or any others that might be in that favored club, that obviously there would be a little bit more suspicion, having now potentially established a precedent? Is that what we can now expect? So this is what I'm very worried about. What are your thoughts?
It certainly sets a precedent. We'll have to wait and see where they go with it. It's hard, at this point, anything I say would be very speculative. But essentially what I see that they have done is that they added extra layers of bureaucracy. And bureaucracy is great at avoiding transparency, avoiding accountability, avoiding responsibility. Because Champakalata, in her letter, she blames the CPO manual, which she took part in rewriting the manual. So, but it's not her responsibility; it's the manual's responsibility.
My hands are tied.
My hands are tied. The manual is silent, and it's just the whole thing. It's just like.
Did you catch the hokey cokey? So this is the challenge. The challenge is talk about privacy detection or whatever. The GBC have to figure out, with all the leaks that happened over the certain Indian Swami correspondence and the embarrassing things that GBCs were saying, these things do leak. And so we had this rather amusing, dear victim, I didn't reply to your previous letter because at that moment I'd stepped down for a week or so as the head of the Ministry of Justice, or CPOC, but I'm back now, so I'm still not going to answer your question, but I'm just explaining why you never got a reply.
Yeah, no, and then these people wear so many hats that when you're writing, you don't know who you're talking to. It's like,
yeah. So
no, but imagine a victim. What chance does 10-year-old child that writes to Champakalata or CPOC, what chance do they stand to get protection, to be heard, to feel protected? It's like zero. The whole system is not. It's like it's turned into this monstrosity.
Well, and if Champakalata or Govardhana or any other people that we've named want to come and try and explain what their version of due process is, we're really interested, because I think you've got a lot of explaining to do. You may think that you've got no accountability because apparently your guidelines that you wrote said that you don't. But you absolutely are going to be accountable to the community. And we're definitely asking for a please explain. One of the leaked emails years ago, I seem to remember, really sums it up. Bhadru Narayan, now Swami, actually says, I also want to get certain Swami off the hook. How very interesting. What an interesting choice of words. He perfectly knew, and that's clear from some other statements, what it was that the certain Swami had done, and it was reprehensible. But, he's a guru, so too big to fail. We can't afford to have more scandals. Or think of all the people who'll be upset, not thinking about victims at all. And that seems, when I looked at that broadcast, that triumphalist broadcast where they're all, bigging each other up about how wonderful they are and due process and everything, victims' needs just didn't they were conspicuously absent. Everything was about protecting ISKCON. We even had that rather strange statement by the GBC EC chairman, Govardhana, unprecedented needs, unparalleled needs. Never before has ISKCON so badly needed legal protection. Huh. Why would that be then?
Good
we
Lord.
would like a please explain. I mean, yeah, you can threaten us and stuff if you want to. I mean, we know that we're walking a tightrope.
It's interesting that Champakalata's point, where she says, "Oh, the new manual, the new and improved manual, is silent about whether the victims should be informed." And the point is that this new and improved manual is not about the victims. The victims are not a priority, and that's why it's not there. If it was a priority, it would have been there. That's evidence that this new and improved. Anyway, I just want to
see any comments. Oh, so I was going to say I don't see any comments yet, so I'll just put a call out for comments. But you keep going, Sanaka.
No, I just want to briefly summarize because it's insane what they've done. So they claimed that they found some procedural improprieties in this case, even though they didn't have access to the full file, even though they didn't try to get access to the full file. They didn't contact the victim. They didn't contact even, and the new management, they are on this, how do you say, very childish conflict with Gandharvika and Kamlesh. Fine. At least contact the judges that were on the case. I mean, try to
Make a good faith effort.
Exactly. Again, they sound like they sound like the American politics, where you have the Democrats say America's terrible because of the Republicans, and the Republicans say America's terrible. So these guys, it's all their mistakes are Gandharvika and Kamlesh's fault. All their shortcomings are not their responsibility. It's all Kamlesh and Gandharvika, and it's just like, okay, yeah, try again. So even though Champakalata overturned all the restrictions, and then in the same email she says the review is limited to jurisdictional defects and does not constitute a judgment on the merits of the original complaint. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the new CPO. They're actually more worried about some highly debatable procedural flaws than they are about letting loose somebody who is accused of raping a child.
They made a big fuss.
These are their priorities.
They made a big fuss the other day, didn't they, about natural justice? I mean, you and I aren't legally trained, as I suspect will be the case with many viewers. But you don't have to be legally trained to see how absolutely, I mean, it's a mess. It's an absolute mess.
No, it's actually worse than people that know me, they kind of know that a lot of my friends describe me as being skeptical, but this went beyond my darkest forecasts. It's like I want somebody to try and explain to me how they believe that these policies, these new and improved policies, will further the protection of children. To me, I don't see it. I see how they protect the perpetrators, how they make life easier for the accused. I don't see how they protect children. I want somebody to explain to me how these policies are going to act as a deterrent to people that may be inclined to abuse children.
Well, it seems fairly obvious from the way in which this whole thing has been conducted, the lack of any clear sense of a process that could be scrutinized and found to be fair, the lack of contact with the victim, taking only the appellant's word for certain things and throwing an entire judgment out simply based on the appellant's say-so without even any attempt to verify. It's amateur hour. It's so obviously crooked. That's the thing. It's brazenly so. There's not even an attempt to maintain an appearance of due process.
Now, imagine you're running the regional office for child protection in Europe, okay? And Champakalata has just passed this cowboy review of the case. She doesn't inform the regional office. Somebody sends into the regional office, and there's this devotee, and she says, well, as far as I'm concerned, he's restricted. There's no information. They didn't inform the UK GBC. They didn't inform Euro Child Protection. They didn't do it. They're not accountable to anybody. It's like they're behaving like, I think a cowboy would do a better job, to be honest.
Yeah. So, I'll also attempt to do some summarizing because we know there's lots of different strands here. The CPOC, CPOC, are declaring that they basically don't take orders from anyone. They're playing double standards, though. They justify, no, I was directed to do this by the GBC EC, but then a GBC member makes an inquiry and saying, hang on a minute, what's this? And is told, no, out of bounds, back in your corner. So this is very, very worrying. They claim that everything is now being devolved to regional CPOs, and that they're just doing oversight. So that's the idea of CPOC, oversight. But here they are directly interfering in a UK case, and not informing the UK GBC, not informing the UK or a European CPO, not informing the victim. Huh?
Imagine you're the victim and you find out that the CPO overturned your case because it's being broadcast on live TV from the Seoul Street Temple, that your perpetrator is getting a hero's welcome from the temple president. Imagine the trauma, the shock, the confusion, oh my God, I can't.
The GBC have to recognize they've had a credibility issue pretty much very solidly since 1985, arguably before that. But, you know, trying to prop up the zonal chariot system and eventually having to concede that it was a complete and utter mess. And anytime you think they've reached rock bottom, they just go and prove that they've got further, that they can dig this hole. And this is just another example where they are morally confused. They're basically, since you've already introduced Trump, they're basically not even hiding it anymore. They're not even trying to come up with any, you know, spurious little cover-up story or anything. It's just naked, brazen.
It's in the GBC minutes from the 2012 meetings when the GBCs are discussing the Lokanut case. I think it's Badri Narayan. He wasn't a Swami at the time. He said, he is quoted as saying, "What a mess." It's just like, yeah, what a mess.
I mean, we may be wondering if we were viewers, because most of us would be, I imagine the people who are typically view this are already deeply concerned about child protection in ISKCON, and possibly already so disenchanted with the society on this and other issues, but especially this issue. People may be wondering what they can do. I've been toying with an idea for some time, and I just want to even float it. I was inspired actually by Sanaka challenging former BVP Anindeshvapu Rox Wexler when he was sitting on the Vyasasan at the manor. I remember at the time I was, oh, this is sacred space. You can't do stuff like this. But actually, as time passed, I realized actually what an act of courage that was. And it was a very significant event in our movement's history. The idea that I'm thinking, and this is taking the sort of civil disobedience, passive resistance movement kind of strategy, a kind of protest. If the GBC or guru that you happen to know is sitting down to give class in your temple, by all means, and you want to signal that you are absolutely fried with this indefensible corruption and incompetence around child protection, wait till Jai Radha Madhava is chanted, you've heard the verse, you've heard the purport. When that person starts to speak their realizations, silently stand up, offer pranams. If you like, you could even explain why you're leaving and leave. I think this would be a very interesting thing if it were to take off around the movement.
Yeah.
Because they'll have that going on. Imagine all of them, 40 of them, however many they are. They'll have that going on a sufficiently frequent basis that they might have to start explaining themselves a little bit, even to disciples, and others are going, what's that all about? I think it could be an interesting strategy, and it's perfectly within your rights. If you feel like, why would this person be considered as having any useful realizations at all if they don't understand zero tolerance on child abuse? If they go into bat for the accused rather than the victims, what on earth are we participating in? Anyway, I'm floating it as if you're wanting to maybe do something that could be a little something to experiment with.
That would be interesting if something like that takes on.
I think we're probably about there, are we? I do see there's maybe one comment that's come through. Okay, yeah, Lolita has said, hang on, why can't I find it? Here we go. That we need a police department. Well, of course, we now have a law department. Apparently, we need more and more lawyers to defend the organization because it's getting itself into deeper and deeper trouble, apparently. But yeah, is there anyone to actually enforce the law? It's a really good point, isn't it? Because apparently we release all these edicts all the time. The GBC don't feel compelled to follow their own edicts. We will always stand down a leader who abuses a child. Well, unless we like him and we there's a whole bunch of disciples. We don't want to lose their money or their support. So maybe we'll make a few exceptions. Oh, what is up with this society? Any final thoughts, Sanaka? Because I suspect that we might be, moving towards wrapping this session.
I just wanted to share that in just a piece of news. In the spring of the coming spring, sometime in the spring, so the GBC commissioned an investigative report into the state of child protection in ISKCON, historical, current. They commissioned professionals in the field of child protection for a change from the University of Kent in England. And this report will be released to the GBC sometime in the spring. I encourage anyone and everyone, all the devotees, to reach out to the GBC and request that this report is made public, because I suspect that if the GBC is done, if the report is done as well as I think it will be, I suspect that the GBCs will be motivated. They will have a strong incentive to hide the report and to bury it, essentially, because if it's done well, it can't be. They're not going to come out in a good light. So I'll keep sending out reminders, but please let's try and get a copy of this report when it comes out.
Yeah, and look, Rob Elins here is making a very valid point that I doubt the media are completely ignorant of all of this going on. They may just be biding their time. It may be that, seeing the litigious nature of certain swamis, they may instead wait for the demise of said swamis. But yes, quite how the GBC is ever going to get over leaving confirmed child abusers as gurus, that's a time bomb, and it should only be a matter of time. Of course, anyone here is welcome, and I know that it can be debated. Are we being enemies of Prabhupada's movement if we, if we highlight or make public some of the dirty laundry? Well, I think we should be a little bit more concerned that the movement is actually potentially going off the rails and failing to be a competent representative of Prabhupada's teachings and expectations and moral standards. That would be worse than helping to perpetuate a false narrative, which is, hey, we're all squeaky clean. So I think there's absolutely a place for people to signal their concerns, and that fourth estate, or whatever it's called, media, is potentially an option. Of course, this is also our attempt to produce content that we think you could share off platform. It's obviously up to you. You might not want everyone on your friends list to know exactly what's going on in the inner workings of the movement. But it's important, they say sunlight is the best disinfectant. And so rather than allow these things to be taking place in the shadows, behind closed doors, as we've entitled the broadcasts, it's actually much better that it's all exposed to the scrutiny of everybody. Our movement absolutely has to get a handle on this nonsense. Otherwise, what's even worth saving or protecting about it? If we're basically saying children are acceptable collateral damage because we absolutely need to uphold the society's image, I'm sorry, I don't think that's got anything to do with Krishna consciousness anymore.
No, there's nothing spiritual about that consciousness. The consciousness that says that appearances are more important than the essence. As long as we look good, it doesn't matter that our children, we've been abusing our children for 50 years. That's the consciousness behind this MO. There is Anita saying in the comments.
So she was interviewed,
and it will not be public. No, I know that. So the people who conducted the investigation, they cannot release it publicly. The GBC, I'm hoping that somebody from the GBC will leak a copy, or that the GBC will have the a little bit of integrity and actually publish it themselves on ISKCON News. That would be the ideal. That would be a good start.
Yeah. Yes, it's a little bit of a mess. Thank you, everybody, for dialing in and watching. I'm hoping you will comment. We will put this on YouTube as well. I'm hoping you will share so that other people join the conversation and so on. There's an open invitation if anyone from CPOC or the Ministry of Justice wants to come and give their side of the story and explain themselves. Of course, we'd only be too delighted to host you.
We should invite Anuttama. Have you ever tried inviting Anuttama?
I have, and
he's busy.
Yeah, he's in a non-communications mode with me. All right. Thank you, Sanaka. Thank you, everybody. Watch this space. There will be more coming on this space in due course.
Yeah, there is actually last announcement. There is a video on child protection coming out shortly. The title is going to be Wolves in Saffron. It's hopefully before the end of the month.
Good on you, Sanaka. All glories to your service. All glories to Prabhupada. Haribol.